My name is Chelsea Acton. I'm 33 years old and I run a horse rescue ranch in rural Virginia. I spend most of my days reading animals. The way a mare pins her ears when she's been hit before. The way a gelding flinches at a raised hand. 8 years of that work and I got pretty good at spotting damage in horses. In people though, specifically in my own family, I missed every sign. What my brother-in-law did at our family reunion last June and what happened 69 days later at my mother's birthday party taught me that the most dangerous predator isn't the one who bites. It's the one who smiles at your table and calls you family. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This channel shares powerful family stories about betrayal, boundaries, and the quiet strength it takes to protect what you've built. If this story moves you, drop a comment below and be sure to subscribe. I didn't grow up dreaming about horses. I grew up in a small town in the Shenandoah Valley, daughter of a cafeteria worker and a machinist. And my first career was numbers. I worked as a staff accountant at a small firm in Stunton for 3 years after college, reconciling ledgers and filing quarterly taxes for local businesses. Good work. Steady. But every Saturday, I drove out to a neighbor's farm to help with her horses. And every Monday morning, I sat at my desk thinking about fences instead of spreadsheets. At 25, I found 12 acres with a barn that had more holes than roof. The asking price was low enough that my 3 years of savings, plus a small SBA loan, covered the down payment. I signed the papers on a Tuesday and started pulling rotten boards off the barn walls the same afternoon. That first winter, I had 5 rescue horses Animals County Services had seized from a neglect case and a space heater I carried between stalls because the barn had no insulation. I learned fence repair from YouTube. I learned equine nutrition from a retired vet who lived down Route 11. I learned that if you show up at 5 in the morning every single day and do the ugly work nobody wants to do, eventually the ugly work turns into something real. 8 years later, Acton Ridge Rescue boarded 22 horses. I ran a farm store out of the front building selling leather goods, honey, and preserves I made myself. I'd built an equine therapy program for veterans dealing with PTSD. 4 sessions a week, no charge. Every evening, I sat at my desk and reconciled the day's numbers. Feed costs, boarding fees, vet bills, down to the cent. That habit would save my ranch. I just didn't know it yet. My sister Paige is 4 years younger. Growing up, we were close the way sisters are when there's nobody else around. Same bedroom, same bus stop, same hand-me-down winter coat. Paige was the social one, the pretty one, the one who knew everyone's name at church. I was the one who balanced Mom's checkbook when Dad got sick. We loved each other. But somewhere between her senior prom and my first tax season, the gap opened. Paige married Garrett Hollis when she was 24. She'd known him 7 months. Mom didn't say no. Mom never said no to Paige. But I caught her standing at the kitchen sink the night before the wedding, scrubbing the same pot for 10 minutes straight. Paige had 2 kids fast. Lily came at 25, Mason at 27. She stayed home with them while Garrett worked insurance. Every time I visited, the conversations got shorter and the undertones got louder. Must be nice to be your own boss. I wish I could just ride horses all day. I told myself she was joking. I told myself she was tired from the kids. Then there was Mom. Linda Acton, 58, retired from the school cafeteria after 31 years. Widowed 6 years ago when Dad's heart gave out in the garage on a Sunday morning. Mom lived alone in the house she'd raised us in, 20 minutes from my ranch. She wanted one thing more than anything, her family together under one roof getting along. You girls are all I have, she said at least once a month. And because I was the oldest, and because I had the space, and because saying no to my mother felt like kicking a kitten, I hosted everything. Every birthday, every holiday, every gathering, at my ranch, on my dime. Garrett Hollis was the kind of man who could talk for 20 minutes without saying anything true. He had a good handshake and a wide smile and a habit of steering every conversation toward money, specifically other people's money. The first time he visited Acton Ridge, he walked the property like a buyer. This place must be worth what? $500,000. Pretty good for a girl who used to do other people's taxes. I didn't correct him on the number. I didn't correct him on the condescension. I poured him iced tea and showed him the barn. That was my mistake pattern. Not confronting, not correcting, just absorbing. 18 months before the reunion, Garrett called me on a Wednesday night. Needed $3,000 for a car repair. His Tahoe's transmission was shot and the shop wouldn't release it without payment. I sent it via Zelle that same hour. He said he'd pay me back in 2 weeks. 18 months later, I was still waiting. I brought it up once, just once. At a Sunday dinner at Mom's. Garrett laughed and waved his fork. Come on, Chels. We're family. Mom nodded along. Paige looked at her plate. I let it go because $3,000 wasn't worth losing my sister. That's the math you do when you love someone. You weigh the money against the relationship and you let the money lose. The problem is people like Garrett never stopped doing that math in their favor. There was one other thing I should have paid more attention to. During a visit to the farm store, Garrett had asked me, "You use QuickBooks or what?" I told him I used my bank's business app on the farm store tablet. Just small talk. I thought he was just making conversation. Mom called in early May with the reunion idea. A real family reunion, Chelsea. Not just us four and the kids. I mean, Aunt Harriet, Uncle Tom, your cousins Karen and Dean, the whole bunch while we're all still healthy enough to enjoy it. She wanted it at the ranch. Of course she did. I said yes because I always said yes. I spent 3 weeks getting ready, rented extra tables and chairs, hired a local barbecue outfit for the catering, strung lights across the barn entrance, set up pony rides for the kids with my gentlest mare, Biscuit, opened the farm store so relatives could browse and buy. The whole thing ran about $4,000 out of my pocket, which I didn't mention to anyone because mentioning it would make Mom feel guilty and make Paige feel compared. June 15th, Saturday. 30 ohm people showed up under a cloudless Virginia sky. Burgers sizzling. Kids chasing each other through the pasture gate. Aunt Harriet hugging me so hard my ribs cracked. It was the kind of day that makes you think family is worth every penny. I was running the farm store register on my tablet, the same iPad I used for the business app, ringing up jars of honey and leather key fobs for cousins I hadn't seen in years. Around 2:00, one of my boarding mates spooked at a kid's balloon and kicked her stall door. Miguel, my stable hand, radioed me. I set the tablet on the counter and told Garrett, who was standing right there, beer in hand, "Hey, can you watch the register for a few minutes? I've got a horse situation." He smiled. "Sure thing, Chels. Go handle your animals." That was the first time Garrett had ever volunteered for anything. I was in the barn for about 8 minutes. The mare, Duchess, had bruised her hock against the stall door. Nothing serious. Cold hose, wrap, done. When I walked back to the farm store, Garrett was behind the counter scrolling the tablet. He looked up fast. "Just checking if the card reader synced," he said. The card reader was sitting on the counter, unplugged. I glanced at the tablet screen. The banking app was minimized, but still open in the background. I'd been logged in earlier to process a vendor payment during the morning setup and hadn't logged out in the rush. I picked up the tablet, closed the app, and set the screen lock. 8 minutes. That's all he needed. But I didn't feel the alarm yet. This was a family reunion. My sister's husband, the man who'd held my niece at her baptism. You don't process threat in those conditions. Your brain files it under odd and moves on. Later that evening, while everyone was eating cake, Paige pulled me aside near the pasture fence. "Chelsea, how much does it actually cost to run this place every month?" "Like really?" I gave her a ballpark. Feed, vet, insurance, Miguel's pay, utilities, about 7 or 8,000. She nodded slowly and said, "That's a lot." I watched the way she said it, not sympathetically, but calculatingly, like she was measuring something. Aunt Harriet interrupted us to take a family photo. Paige smiled for the camera. In the photo, we're standing shoulder to shoulder, arms around each other. Sisters, I keep that photo on my fridge. It reminds me that the people closest to you are the ones who can reach deepest into your pockets. Everyone left by 7. I cleaned up alone, which was standard. Swept the barn aisle, stacked the rented chairs, hauled trash bags to the dumpster. By 9:30, I was at my desk doing what I did every night, reconciling the day's numbers. I opened the banking app on my laptop and looked at the operating account balance, $3,847. I stared at the screen. On Friday, the day before the reunion, the balance had been $50,847. 3 Zelle transfers had gone out that afternoon. 18,000 at 2:14 p.m., 15,000 at 2:22 p.m., 14,000 at 2:31 p.m., total $47,000. Gone in 17 minutes. The recipient field showed initials GH. I checked it 3 times, 4 times, 5. Then I grabbed my phone and called the bank's after-hours line. The automated system confirmed the transfers were completed. A live agent told me that because the transactions originated from a registered device on my account, they couldn't reverse them without a formal dispute. And filing a dispute on a Saturday night meant waiting until Monday. I changed every password. I enabled additional security layers. I did everything right, and it didn't matter because the money was already gone. I sat in the barn that night on an overturned bucket between Juniper, the first horse I ever rescued, a one-eyed thoroughbred who'd been left in a field, and the feed room door. $3,847. That was 3 weeks of feed for 22 horses, maybe 4 if I stretched it. After that, I would have to start choosing which animals to send away. I pressed my forehead against Juniper's neck and breathed. Sunday morning. I sat on my porch with coffee I couldn't taste and called Garrett. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Cheerful. "Hey Chels, great party yesterday. Lily hasn't stopped talking about Biscuit." I didn't small talk him. "Garrett, I need to talk to you about 3 Zelle transfers totaling $47,000 from my business account." Silence. 4 seconds of it. Then a sound. Not a laugh exactly. More like a snort. The kind of exhale you make when someone asks a question you think is beneath you. "Oh, that. Yeah. Listen, Chels, we needed it." Paige didn't want to ask because she knew you'd make it into a whole thing. "We're behind on some bills, some mortgage stuff. We'll pay it back." "Pay it back when?" "When I close on this deal I've got in the pipeline? Couple months tops." "You accessed my business account without my knowledge and transferred $47,000. That's not borrowing, Garrett. That's theft." His voice changed. The charm drained out of it like water through gravel. "Theft? Come on. We needed it more than you. You've got your ranch, your horses, your little store. We've got 2 kids and a mortgage we can't make. So yeah, we needed it. And frankly, Chelsea, you owe your sister. She's been watching you play farmer princess for years while we scrape by. We needed it more than you." I let the words sit in my chest for a moment. Not because they hurt. They did, but because they clarified something. This wasn't a man who felt guilty about taking. This was a man who felt entitled to it. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From the hard, clean edge of understanding that there was no conversation that would fix this. Monday morning, my phone rang before I'd finished feeding the horses. "Mom. Chelsea. Honey. Paige called me. I know you're upset, but they're going through a hard time. Garrett's been under a lot of pressure at work. You know how it is for young families. Mom, he stole $47,000 from my operating account. He borrowed it. There's a difference. And frankly, she paused. I could hear her choosing the words she thought would end the conversation. Family doesn't keep score, Chelsea. Family doesn't keep score. I'd heard variations of that line my whole life. When I paid for Paige's car repair, when I covered Mom's dental bill, when I lent Garrett $3,000, he never returned. The score was always the same. Chelsea gives, everyone takes. And anyone who notices the pattern is the problem. Mom, $47,000 isn't a score. It's my payroll. It's my feed supplier. It's the vet bill for 4 horses due next week. If I don't get that money back, I start losing animals. Can't you take out a loan or dip into savings? My savings built this ranch. My operating account runs it. He emptied the operating account. Just let it go, Chelsea. I don't want this to tear our family apart. I looked out the office window. 22 horses in the pasture. Miguel hauling hay bales from the storage shed. The farm store still decorated with reunion leftovers I hadn't taken down. All of it running on $3,000 and whatever I could scrape from product sales this week. Letting it go meant letting the ranch go. And the ranch was the only thing in my life that had never lied to me. I'll handle it, Mom, I said. And I meant it, just not the way she hoped. I sat there in my office watching my horses graze, knowing I had maybe 3 weeks of operating money left. 3 weeks before I'd have to choose which animals to send away. Have you ever had someone take what you built and tell you it was your duty to let them? If this story is hitting close, stay with me. What happened next? I didn't see it coming either. Monday afternoon, I drove to the bank. The branch manager, a woman named Diane, who'd handled the ranch account since I opened it, pulled up the transaction log on her screen and turned the monitor so I could see. 3 Zelle transfers device Chelsea's iPad IP address matching my ranch Wi-Fi network. Timestamps 2:14, 2:22, 2:31 p.m. The exact window I was in the barn wrapping Duchess's hawk. The system shows these were initiated from your registered device on your network, Diane said. From our end, they read as authorized. Someone else used my tablet while I was in the barn. I have a witness who can confirm my location. Diane folded her hands. Miss Acton, I believe you, but without a police report establishing unauthorized access, the bank treats this as an account holder's transaction. We can't reverse completed Zelle transfers under those circumstances. I sat with that for a moment. The system was telling me that because the thief used my device, it was my problem. Then I need a police report, I said. Diane nodded. I'd recommend it. I drove back to the ranch and called Ruth Calloway. Ruth was 55, a CPA who'd been doing the ranch's taxes for 6 years. She was also the most methodical person I'd ever met, the kind of woman who color-coded her grocery list. Ruth, I need your help tracing some transfers, and I need it fast. Ruth came to the ranch Tuesday evening with her laptop and a box of printed bank records I'd sent her that morning. We sat at my kitchen table and she walked me through what she'd found. The 3 Zelle transfers landed in 2 accounts. 2 went to an account under Garrett Hollis, $18,000 and $14,000. 1 went to a joint account under Garrett and Paige Hollis. $15,000. From Garrett's personal account, Ruth traced 2 outgoing wires in the days following. $18,000 went to an entity called Hollis Property Group, LLC. She'd checked the state corporation records. The LLC had been dissolved 6 months earlier. Whatever business Garrett had tried to run through, it was already dead. The second wire, $14,000, went to an online platform. From Ruth flagged for me, a sports betting website. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face still. Ruth was watching me the way she watched numbers, waiting for the data to settle before drawing a conclusion. And the $15,000 in the joint account, I asked withdrawn in cash, a TM pulls over 48 hours, for separate transactions of $3,750 each, just under the $4,000 daily limit. Cash. No trail after the ATM. Likely paying off someone who didn't take digital payments, bookmakers, creditors, people Garrett owed money to in the physical world. Chelsea, this isn't borrowing. Ruth said the money was moved, split, and partially cashed out within 2 days. That's concealment. A prosecutor would call this larceny by unauthorized access. I asked her what I needed. Everything you just showed me, she said, plus a sworn statement. Plus the bank's device log proving you weren't the one who initiated the transfers. I was in the barn. Miguel saw me. Ruth nodded. Then we have an alibi and a trail. Document everything. Emotion won't hold up. Numbers will. Friday morning, I drove to the county sheriff's office and asked for Deputy Earl Beckett. Earl was in his 50s, built like a fence post, and had a quiet way of listening that made you feel heard without being rushed. I knew him from the equine therapy program. His son, a Marine veteran, had been one of my first participants. We sat in a small interview room and I laid it out. Bank statements, transaction logs showing the transfers originated from my farm store tablet during the 8-minute window I was in the barn. Ruth's forensic summary tracing the funds to a dissolved LLC and a gambling website. Miguel's written statement confirming I was handling a horse emergency during the transfer timestamps. Beckett looked through each page, making small marks with a pencil. When he finished, he leaned back. "Ma'am, you've done half my job for me." He paused, looked at me directly. "You sure you want to pursue this? It's your sister's husband. He took $47,000 from the account that feeds 22 rescue horses. He used it for gambling. If I don't recover it, those animals lose their home. So, yes, Deputy. I'm sure." He filed the report, assigned a case number, and explained the process. The sheriff's office would investigate. The district attorney would review the evidence and decide on charges. It could take several weeks. I thanked him and drove home. On the way, I passed Page's subdivision. Garrett's silver Tahoe sat in the driveway. The same Tahoe I'd paid $3,000 to fix. Lily's pink bicycle lay on its side in the front yard. Mason's tricycle next to it. These were my niece and nephew. Their father was the man I'd just reported to law enforcement. I kept driving. The following Tuesday, Page's minivan pulled into my gravel drive without warning. Lily and Mason tumbled out before the engine stopped. "Aunt Chels, can we ride Biscuit?" I let Miguel take them to the round pen while Paige and I stood inside the farm store. She looked smaller than I remembered. Dark circles under her eyes, nails bitten down. "Chelsea, I know what Garrett did was wrong." She started with that, an admission wrapped in a qualifier. "But you filed a police report against family." "He stole from me, Paige. He was desperate. You don't understand what it's been like. The bills, the collectors calling at dinner, the mortgage company sending letters. He didn't want to ask you because her voice cracked. Because he's too proud and too stupid." I waited. "There's a technique I use with frightened horses. You stand still, you breathe slowly, and you let them come to you. I used it on my sister." And then she said it. "You have your horses. We have nothing." I looked at her. Then I looked through the farm store window at the barn I'd rebuilt with my own hands. At the pasture I'd fenced post by post at the 22 animals who depended on me for food and shelter and the kind of patience nobody had shown them before. Nothing. She called all of that nothing. She called 8 years of 5 a.m. mornings and broken fingers and maxed out credit lines and county fair ribbon money. Nothing. Because it wasn't a house in a subdivision with a 2-car garage. Because it smelled like hay instead of air freshener. I had nothing too, Paige. 8 years ago, a barn with holes in the roof and 5 horses nobody wanted. I didn't take from anyone. I built. She grabbed her kids and left without saying goodbye. 3 weeks after the theft, my operating account dropped below $1,000. The feed delivery was due, $6,200 for hay and grain that would keep 22 horses alive through July. I called my supplier, a man named Dale, who'd been delivering to me since my second year. Dale, I need to push the payment 2 weeks. I've got a situation. Silence. Then Chelsea, you've never been late. Not once. 2 weeks is fine. The relief lasted about an hour until I opened my email and saw the vet invoice. $2,800 for routine wellness checks on 4 horses. Then the payroll reminder. Miguel's biweekly $2,400. I went to the farm store and marked everything down 20%. Leather wallets, candle sets, honey jars, sold $3,100 worth in a week to walk-in customers and a church group that came for a barn tour that covered Miguel and part of the vet bill. The equine therapy sessions were harder. I had to postpone the Thursday group. For veterans who drove 40 minutes each way to work with my horses. I called the program coordinator and said something about scheduling conflicts. I didn't say I couldn't afford the liability insurance payment that week. That Thursday, I walked the barn aisle at dusk checking water buckets. Juniper, my one-eyed thoroughbred, stood at her stall door and pushed her muzzle against my shoulder the way she always did when the barn got quiet. $47,000. Garrett called it necessary. My mother called it family business. Paige called my ranch horses and herself nothing. But $47,000 was nearly 8 months of feed, close to a year of Miguel's salary, 3 years of the therapy program. It wasn't family money. It was the blood of my operation. And it was sitting in a gambling account and an ATM cash withdrawal log. The jacket turned up in the first week of July. I was clearing out the storage shed behind the farm store, selling off old equipment and supplies I didn't need, scraping together every dollar I could when I found a denim jacket hanging on a nail by the door pages. She'd left it the day of the reunion. I almost tossed it in the donation pile. Then I checked the pockets because that's what you do before you give away a jacket. The left pocket had a crumpled tissue and a hair tie. The right pocket had a folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a screenshot printed on regular paper creased from being folded and carried. A screenshot of my banking app, my business operating account. Balance $50,84723. The timestamp on the screenshot 28 p.m. June 15, 6 minutes before the first cell transfer. In the bottom margin in Paige's handwriting. I knew her handwriting the way I knew her voice. A short devastating note. Enough. G says, yes. I stood in the storage shed holding that piece of paper and felt the last wall between what I suspected and what I knew come down. Paige hadn't just known about the theft. She'd scouted it. She checked my balance on the tablet, confirmed the amount was worth taking, printed the screenshot as proof, and communicated with Garrett. G says yes before he executed the transfers. This wasn't Garrett acting alone while Paige looked away. This was coordinated, planned. The sister I'd carried my whole life had walked into my farm store, checked how much was in my account, and given her husband the green light to empty it. I folded the paper carefully, put it in a plastic sleeve, and drove to Ruth's office. Ruth read it twice, looked up at me. This changes the picture. It's not just unauthorized access anymore. This is conspiracy. I drove home, put the plastic sleeve in my evidence folder, and added a tab. The folder was getting thick. Ruth called me the following week with the full picture. She'd traced every outgoing transaction from Garrett's personal account for the prior 6 months. The pattern was ugly. Monthly deposits from his paycheck, $2,600 after taxes, followed by outgoing transfers to 3 online betting platforms, poker, sports, daily fantasy. The amounts ramped up over time, $200 here, $500 there, then 1,000 swings in the weeks before the reunion. By June, Garrett was in a hole. The dissolved LLC, Hollis Property Group, had been his attempt at flipping a foreclosed duplex in Westboro. He'd bought it with borrowed money, sunk another $15,000 into renovations he couldn't finish, and walked away when the contractor threatened to lien the property. The LLC dissolution was just paperwork catching up to failure. He didn't need your money for his kids, Ruth said. He needed it for his habit. The real estate was the excuse he told himself. The gambling was the engine. I sat with that $47,000 from my horse rescue routed through Zelle, split between a gambling website and cash withdrawals that probably went to bookmakers Garrett owed. Does Paige know about the gambling? I asked. Hard to say from the financials alone, but she knew about the theft. That note proves it. I thought about Lily and Mason, about Paige standing in my farm store saying they had nothing. About Garrett betting my feed money on football games. Then I thought about something else. If nobody in the family saw the truth, Garrett would do this again. To Mom, to Aunt Harriet, to anyone whose account he could reach. I picked up my phone and called Deputy Beckett. Deputy, the district attorney, any update? Case is strong, Miss Acton. DA is reviewing. Should have a decision within the month. My mother's birthday is August 23rd. The whole family will be there. A pause. I see. Mom called in early August. Her birthday was 3 weeks away and she wanted everyone there. No drama, Chelsea. I mean it. You and Paige need to work this out before my party. Mom, this isn't something Paige and I can work out over coffee. There's a police report. The district attorney is reviewing it. A district attorney? Chelsea, you're going to send your sister's husband to jail. He stole $47,000 and used it for gambling, Mom. The line went quiet. I could hear the television in her living room. Some game show. The tiny sound of applause. What did you say? Gambling, online betting. That's where the money went. Not to bills, not to the mortgage. Mom had never heard that part. Garrett had told her and Paige had confirmed that the money was for catching up on the house payment and medical bills for the kids. Standard sympathy plays. He gambled it. Her voice was thin. Ruth traced it. Bank records confirmed. $18,000 to a sports betting platform, $14,000 to a property investment that was already dead, and $15,000 cashed out at ATMs, probably paying off people he owed. Mom didn't say anything for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was the one I remembered from childhood. The one she used when something broke that couldn't be glued. I didn't know that. I know you didn't. Another pause. Are you still coming to my birthday? I could have said no. I could have said I needed space. But there were 22 horses depending on my ability to face this situation head-on. And every door I'd tried, the phone call, the mother, the sister had been shut in my face. The birthday was the last one. I'll be there, Mom. Wouldn't miss it. 2 weeks before Mom's birthday, I sat at my desk and built the folder, not a metaphorical folder, a physical one, beige, tabbed, labeled. Tab 1, bank transaction logs with timestamps highlighted. Tab 2, the device log from the bank showing the transfers originated from my farm store tablet. Tab 3, Miguel's signed affidavit stating I was in the barn tending to Duchess during the exact time window of the transfers. Tab 4, Ruth's forensic accounting summary, tracing the money from my account through Garrett's accounts to the gambling platform, the dead LLC, and the ATM cash outs. Tab 5 pages handwritten note enough. G says yes in a plastic evidence sleeve. Tab 6. A copy of the police report with the case number. Every claim backed by a document. Every document backed by a number. Every number pointed to the same man. Ruth stopped by the ranch to review the folder. You could just let the DA handle this. She said let the legal system do its job. You don't need to show the family. Garrett has been telling everyone I'm overreacting. Mom thinks it's a family loan. Aunt Harriet thinks we're having a sisterly spat. If I don't show them the truth, his version becomes the family story. And he does this again to Mom, to Harriet, to whoever he can reach next. Ruth nodded slowly. Then make it clean. No shouting, no accusations without proof on the table. I learned that from you. I paused, looking out the window at the pasture. And from my horses, they don't respond to yelling. They respond to steady hands. I closed the folder, put it in my bag, and hung the bag on the hook by the front door. 14 days. What happened at my mother's birthday party changed everything. August 23rd, Mom's birthday. Her small ranch-style house on Maple Street, the same house Paige and I grew up in. She'd strung lights across the backyard and set up a long table under the oak tree. Paper plates, plastic cups, a cooler of sweet tea, and beer. The guest list was the whole family. Mom, me, Paige, Garrett, Lily and Mason, Aunt Harriet and Uncle Tom, cousins Karen and Dean, and a few of Mom's neighbors, about 15 people total. I arrived at 5 with my bag over my shoulder, and a gift in my hands, a picture frame I'd made from reclaimed barnwood, holding a photo of Mom and Dad from their 30th anniversary. She cried when she opened it. "Oh, Chelsea, this is beautiful." I hugged her and said happy birthday and tried not to think about what was in my bag. Garrett was already there standing by the grill with Uncle Tom, beer in hand, talking about something. Football probably. When I walked into the backyard, he looked up and gave me a nod. Casual, like we were fine, like he hadn't taken $47,000 from my business account and spent it on sports bets. Paige was at the kids' table cutting up hot dogs for Mason. She saw me and looked away. Dinner was pleasant on the surface. Ribs, corn on the cob, potato salad, Mom's coleslaw. People ate and laughed and told stories about Dad. Uncle Tom made everyone crack up with a story about the time Dad tried to fix a lawn mower and set his shoe on fire. It felt almost normal. Then Aunt Harriet turned to me between bites of corn and said, "So Chelsea, how's the ranch? Paige mentioned you've been having some money trouble." I put my fork down, looked across the table at Paige. She was studying her plate. I reached for my bag. "Actually, Aunt Harriet, I'm glad you brought that up." I stood. Not dramatically, just the way you stand when you have something to say and you want people to hear it clearly. I unzipped my bag and pulled out the folder. "I want to address something that's been misrepresented to some of you. I'm not having money trouble. Someone took my money." Garrett set his beer down. On June 15th, during our family reunion at my ranch, 3 unauthorized Zelle transfers were made from my business operating account. $18,000, $15,000, $14,000. Total $47,000. I pulled the first page from the folder, a copy of the bank statement with the transfers highlighted, and passed it to Aunt Harriet. She was the one who'd asked. She deserved to see the answer. The transfers were initiated from my farm store tablet during an 8-minute window when I was in the barn tending to a horse that had kicked her stall door. My stable hand, Miguel, has provided a signed statement confirming exactly where I was during those timestamps. I kept my voice, even flat, almost. "The way you explain a vet report, clinical, factual, nothing extra." Garrett pushed back from the table. "Chelsea, what the hell are you doing? This is your mother's birthday." I looked at him the way I look at a horse that's about to bolt. Steady eyes, no sudden movements. "I know what day it is, Garrett." "Do you know what day June 15th was?" I let it hang for one breath. "That was the day you accessed my banking app on my farm store tablet and transferred $47,000 to your personal accounts." The backyard went silent. Even the crickets seemed to stop. Garrett recovered fast. He'd had 2 months to rehearse. "This is ridiculous. I borrowed some money to cover our bills. I told Chelsea I'd pay it back. She's turning a family matter into a federal case." I pulled the next page from the folder and handed it to Uncle Tom, who was sitting closest. "This is a forensic accounting summary prepared by Ruth Calloway, CPA. It traces the funds after they left my account." I pointed across the table at Garrett. $18,000 went to Hollis Property Group, an LLC that was dissolved 6 months before the transfer, a dead company. Garrett's jaw tightened. $14,000 went to an online sports betting platform. The air changed. I could feel it. The way you feel a weather shift before the rain. Uncle Tom looked up from the paper. Karen covered her mouth. Garrett's hands dropped to his sides. I turned to page. $15,000 went to your joint account and was withdrawn in cash at ATMs within 48 hours. Page's voice came out thin. I didn't know where it came from. I reached into the folder and pulled out the plastic sleeve. Held it up so the table could see. This is your handwriting, Paige. I found it in your jacket pocket. Left at my ranch after the reunion. It reads enough. G says yes. Timestamped 6 minutes before the first transfer. Paige went white, no color left in her face at all. Uncle Tom said, "Good God." Aunt Harriet set her fork down. Dean leaned forward. Garrett stood up. His fists were clenched at his sides, knuckles pale around the bones. Garrett looked around the table like a man searching for a door. You petty. He caught himself, recalibrated, tried the charm again, turning to Uncle Tom and Aunt Harriet with open hands. Look, everyone, Chelsea's blowing this out of proportion. It was a family loan. She's upset. I get it. But this ambush at her own mother's birthday. This is what we're doing now. Nobody answered him. He turned back to me. The charm was gone. What replaced it was the real Garrett, the one I'd only heard on the phone. You think you're better than us, don't you? With your ranch and your horses and your holier-than-thou act. You've always looked down on Paige on me. This whole family bends over backward for St. Chelsea while we can't even keep the lights on. I stayed seated, folder open, hands flat on the table. I'm not asking for an apology, Garrett. I'm showing my family what happened with documents because documents don't have opinions. He slammed his palm on the table. Plates jumped. Silverware rattled. Lily, sitting at the kids' table 10 feet away, started crying. You're trying to destroy this family. His voice cracked on the last word. Not with emotion, with the sound of a man who realizes the room isn't on his side and has nothing left but volume. Over money. I looked at him. Over $47,000 of hay money and vet bills and the payroll for the only employee I have. Money you put on a sports betting website. His mouth opened, closed. He hadn't known that I'd traced the gambling. He'd assumed the money was buried deep enough. But numbers don't bury. They surface. That's what they do. Paige stood up, tears running, hands shaking. Stop it. Both of you just stop. She turned to me. I didn't want this to happen. I told him not to take that much. I told him. She froze, heard her own words, realized she'd just admitted to the whole family that she'd known the amount and tried to negotiate it, not prevent it. I kept my voice soft, not cruel, just clear. How much were you okay with him taking, Paige? She stared at me. I thought maybe $10,000 just for the mortgage, just to catch up on the house. I didn't know about the gambling. Chelsea, I swear I didn't know about the gambling. I looked at my sister. Really looked. I saw the dark circles, the bitten nails, the way she held her shoulders like someone waiting to be hit. I saw a woman trapped, no income of her own, 2 small children, a husband who lied about where the money went. And I also saw the woman who'd checked my bank balance on my tablet, written enough, and handed the keys to the vault. Both things were true at the same time. I believe you didn't know about the gambling, I said. But you checked my balance. You confirmed the amount. You watched him walk to my register and you said nothing to me. I was scared, Chelsea. If we lost the house, Lily's school district, everything. I understand being scared. I've been scared for 8 years. Every time a vet bill came in, I couldn't cover. Every time feed prices jumped. Every time a horse needed emergency surgery. But I never stole from you. Paige sat down slowly like her legs had given out. Mom at the head of the table whispered, "Girls, please." I looked at her. "I'm almost done, Mom." I pulled the last document from the folder, held it up so everyone could see the county sheriff's office header. "This is a copy of the police report I filed. Case number on file with the sheriff's office. The district attorney is reviewing formal charges. Larceny by unauthorized access to a computer. In Virginia, for this amount, that can be prosecuted as a felony." The word felony landed on the table like a stone in still water. Garrett went pale. Truly pale. Not angry pale, not frustrated pale, but the ashy gray of a man who just heard a word that rearranges his future. "You called the cops." His voice was barely above a whisper on family. "You stole $47,000 from my business account and gambled it. That's not a family matter, Garrett. That's a crime. I'll pay it back every cent. I swear. Just call it off. Tell them you made a mistake." I folded my hands on the folder. "I don't make mistakes with numbers, Garrett. You know that." Aunt Harriet leaned forward. "Chelsea, is there a way to handle this without?" I looked at her, not with anger, with exhaustion. "Aunt Harriet, I tried. I called him. He told me they needed it more than me. I went to Mom. She told me family doesn't keep score. I went to Paige. She told me I have my horses and they have nothing." I looked around the table at every face, every pair of eyes. I'm showing you this because every other door was closed in my face. This was the only one left. Nobody spoke. The birthday cake sat in the center of the table. Blue frosting spelling Happy 58th Linda. Uncut. Garrett tried one more angle. The last tool in his kit, the one he always reached for when logic failed. He turned to Mom, Linda. He called her by her first name, which he never did. He called her Mom, but not tonight. Tonight, he needed her as an ally, not a mother. "You're really going to sit here and let her do this at your birthday? She's tearing this family apart over money." Mom looked between him and me. I could see the war in her face. The woman who wanted peace against the woman who just heard the word gambling. Garrett pressed. "She's got more money than all of us combined. The ranch, the store, the horses. 47,000 is nothing to her. She won't even miss it." I didn't raise my voice. "It's not nothing to the 22 horses who depend on me for feed. It's not nothing to Miguel who depends on me for a paycheck. It's not nothing to the veterans who drive 40 minutes to my ranch for therapy because no one else offers it for free." The room shifted. I felt it like a tide pulling. Aunt Harriet nodded once, small but firm. Uncle Tom uncrossed his arms and crossed them again, tighter. Cousin Dean was watching Garrett the way you watch someone you've made up your mind about. Garrett felt it, too. His eyes moved around the table and found no purchase, no ally, no foothold. He turned back to me, voice dropping low. "You'll regret this. I promise you, you will regret this." I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, set it on the table, screen up. "I'd like everyone to note what he just said." Dean spoke up. "That sounded like a threat, Garrett." "It's not." I didn't. 3 firm knocks on the front door cut him off. Mom stood up. Her chair scraped against the patio. She walked through the kitchen to the front door and opened it. Deputy Earl Beckett stood on the porch in full uniform, badge catching the porch light. His partner stood a step behind. "Evening, ma'am. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm looking for Garrett Hollis." Mom's hand tightened on the doorframe. "What is this about?" "Ma'am, may we come inside?" She stepped back. Beckett walked through the kitchen and out the back door to the patio. His eyes swept the table, the plates, the cake, the folder open in front of me and landed on Garrett, who was standing at the far end. "Mr. Hollis, I have a warrant for your arrest. Larceny by unauthorized access to a computer in connection with the theft of $47,000 from the operating account of Acton Ridge Rescue on June 15. The words were formal, measured, the same steady cadence as every arrest statement, but in this backyard under these string lights at this birthday table, they sounded like something falling from a great height. Garrett looked at me. "You actually did it." I didn't look away. "I told you on the phone, Garrett, what you did wasn't borrowing." Beckett read the Miranda rights. Professional, unhurried. Garrett's hands went behind his back. The cuffs clicked. Paige screamed. Not words, just sound. She grabbed Mason and pulled Lily close. "No, Chelsea, please stop this. The kids. Think about the kids." I looked at my sister, at my niece crying into her mother's shirt, at my nephew's wide, confused eyes. "I didn't start this, Paige. He did. I'm finishing it." Mom stood in the kitchen doorway, tears on her face, hands trembling against the frame. She looked at me with something I'd never seen from her before. Not anger, not disappointment, grief. "I just didn't want to lose either of you." "You didn't lose me, Mom. You lost $47,000 of my livelihood because you told me family doesn't keep score." I heard my own voice and it was steady. "You're right, Mom. Family doesn't keep score, but the Commonwealth of Virginia does." Beckett led Garrett through the house. The front door closed behind them. The table was half empty, plates abandoned with food still on them. Uncle Tom's beer going flat in the heat. The birthday cake, Happy 58th, Linda in blue frosting, sat untouched in the center like a monument to something that used to be whole. Aunt Harriet moved first. She pulled her chair next to mine and put her hand on my arm. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did." Uncle Tom leaned back in his chair. "If he'd taken that from my shop, I'd have done a sight worse than a police report." Cousin Karen asked how long the gambling had been going on. I told her what Ruth had found. At least 2 years based on the financial records. Dean shook his head and Paige knew. I paused, thought about what to say. She knew enough. We sat in the quiet for a while, the kind of quiet that happens after something breaks and everyone is still holding the pieces. Then I got up and walked to Mom. She was sitting at the head of the table alone, hands in her lap, staring at the cake. I sat beside her, didn't touch her, didn't reach for her hand. "Mom, I didn't want this to happen at your birthday, but I didn't choose the timing. You told me to have it resolved before your party. It's resolved." She looked at me with wet eyes. "Was it worth it? $47,000 of feed money and vet bills and the salary for the only employee I've got. Yes, it was worth it. Those horses can't file their own police reports." She didn't answer. I picked up my bag, kissed her on the forehead, and said, "Happy birthday, Mom." I drove back to the ranch in the dark. Juniper was standing at the fence line when my headlight swung across the pasture, waiting, the way she always waited. 6 weeks after Mom's birthday, the legal dust settled. Garrett's attorney negotiated a plea with the district attorney. The original charge, felony larceny by unauthorized access to a computer, was reduced to a lesser felony in exchange for a guilty plea, full restitution, 200 hours of community service, and 2 years of supervised probation. Part of the probation terms, mandatory gambling, addiction counseling. The restitution was court-ordered. Garrett's wages would be garnished. I'd received $47,000 over 3 years, roughly $1,300 a month. It wasn't immediate, but it was enforceable. The court didn't charge Paige. The district attorney determined she hadn't been the one who accessed the account. Garrett's fingerprints were on the transfers, not hers, but the handwritten note was entered into the court file. Her involvement was on the record. It would be there forever. In September, Paige filed for legal separation. She moved back into Mom's house with Lily and Mason. Garrett rented a studio apartment on the other side of town. For the ranch, I'd gotten through the worst months with a small emergency loan from the Agricultural Credit Union. Ruth had co-signed a reference letter describing the circumstances. Dale, my feed supplier, extended credit through July without complaint. Miguel never missed a day of work. He told me once while we were mucking stalls. Ms. Zacton, my last boss, forgot to pay me 3 times and blamed the bank. You never forgot once. The equine therapy program restarted in September. Deputy Beckett's son, Travis, came to the first session back. He'd brought a friend, another Marine, fresh out of treatment. They spent an hour with Juniper in the round pen. When they left, Travis shook my hand and said, "She's still got it." He meant the horse, but I think he meant me, too. Mom called in October, first time in 6 weeks. "Can I come see the ranch?" "You're always welcome, Mom." She drove up on a Saturday morning. I watched her walk the property the way she used to walk the school cafeteria line, slowly, taking inventory of everything that needed tending. She stopped at the pasture fence and watched the horses for a long time. Then she sat on the porch with me and drank iced tea in the October sun. "I should have listened to you," she said. "You should have listened to the numbers." "I didn't know about the gambling." "I know you didn't. But you knew they were struggling and you told me to fix it." "You've always told me to fix it since I was 16 and working 2 summer jobs so Paige could go to dance camp." She looked at her glass. "Your father used to say, I asked too much of you." He was right. We sat in that for a while. A horse whinnied from the far pasture. Duchess, the mare who'd spooked at the reunion. She was fine now, hawk-heeled, calm, standing in a patch of clover like nothing had ever gone wrong. "I'm sorry, Chelsea." Mom's voice was quiet but clear. No hedging, no qualifiers. For the scorekeeping line, for the pressure, for all of it. "I forgive you, Mom." I meant it. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, and it's not the same as going back. It's just deciding that carrying the anger costs more than setting it down. But I'm setting a boundary. My money is my money. My ranch is my business. If you or Paige or anyone else needs help, you come to me and ask. You don't take. And I decide. She nodded. Small. Tired. Fair enough. I poured her another glass of tea. November. Paige brought Lily and Mason to the ranch for the first time since the birthday party. I heard the minivan on the gravel before I saw it. The kids were out of the car before Paige turned off the engine, running toward the barn in their boots, yelling my name. "Aunt Chels, is Biscuit ready? Can we ride?" Mason wants to try by himself. I let Miguel help them saddle up while Paige stood by the fence watching. She didn't come into the barn, didn't cross the fence line like she needed permission to be on ground. She used to walk freely. After an hour, I went to her. She was leaning on the top rail, arms crossed, watching Lily brush Juniper's mane with a concentration that bordered on worship. "I'm sorry," Paige said. The word sat between us. Small, overused, not enough, and also all there was. "I know. Will it ever be the same between us?" I watched Lily whisper something to Juniper. The horse lowered her head and let the girl press her forehead against her muzzle. "No," I said, "but Lily and Mason are welcome here anytime, every weekend if you want. They're my niece and nephew. That hasn't changed." "And us?" I thought about the note. "Enough. G says yes." Written in her handwriting, found in her pocket. "You checked my balance and wrote enough. You watched your husband walk to my register and you said nothing to me. I need time, Paige. Maybe a lot of time." Her chin trembled, but she held. "I understand." I watched her load the kids into the car. Mason pressed his palm against the window and waved. I waved back and stood at the gate until the tail lights disappeared down the dirt road. Then I walked back to the barn. Juniper was at her stall door waiting for a carrot. By spring, the ranch was whole again. Restitution payments arrived on the first of each month. $1,300 deposited directly. No contact required. The emergency loan was halfway paid down. Dale's feed deliveries came on schedule, and I'd started ordering extra for the 2 new rescues I'd taken in over the winter. A draft cross from a farm auction and a pony that animal control pulled from a backyard in Harrisonburg. 24 horses now. The farm store was doing better than ever. I'd added weekend workshops, leather working, candle making, honey extraction, and the local tourism board started listing Acton Ridge Rescue in their visitor guides. Revenue was up 20% over the previous year. The therapy program expanded to 2 groups a week. Travis Beckett volunteered as an assistant on Thursday mornings. He was good with the horses, patient, steady. He reminded me of his father. Miguel got a raise. I hired a second hand, a young woman named Jess who just finished an equine science degree and wanted field experience more than a paycheck. Mom came to the ranch every other Sunday. She helped in the farm store, tagging products and chatting with customers. She never mentioned money. She never said, "Family doesn't keep score." Paige was working as a dental receptionist, her first job in 6 years. Lily and Mason spent 2 Saturdays a month at the ranch, brushing horses and eating peanut butter sandwiches in the Hoft. Garrett completed his community service picking up roadside trash. He lived in a studio apartment, attended mandated counseling, and had not contacted me once. I walked the fence line every morning at dawn, the way I had for 8 years. The barn roof didn't leak. The numbers balanced. The horses were fed. I used to think being the strong one in the family meant carrying everyone. It doesn't. Being strong means knowing when someone is reaching into the load to take from it instead of adding to it. And having the quiet courage to set the weight down. My ranch didn't survive because I gave everything away. It survived because I finally learned what was mine to protect. And I protected it the only way I know how, with steady hands and honest numbers. That's my story. 1 reunion, 1 drained account, and 69 days of learning that family doesn't mean free. If this story reminded you that your boundaries are worth protecting, even when someone calls you selfish for having them, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.